Welcome to Creators and Keepers, a project of cultureverse.org. Our guests today are Alex Kwon and Eric Douglas. Alex is the executive director of Graft Living, and Eric is the project lead. As part of our partnership with Graft, we are highlighting their micro greenhouse, which is designed to be a self-sustaining ecosystem built with on-site natural materials and those that are reclaimed. We scanned the greenhouse with our Matterport camera to create a virtual tour, complete with educational videos and other information about its design and construction. You can learn more about our work with Graft Living by visiting the project section of our website, cultureverse.org. Welcome to Alex and Eric. Alex, would you mind introducing Eric?
Sure. Hi, this is Eric Douglas, partner in crime for about 3 years now. Feels like we've known each other our whole lives. He is a jack of many trades. He's lived a lot of lives, had a lot of jobs. I'm continually amazed. He's like, I used to do that. And it's proving to be a very valuable asset to have his wide perspective. He's masterful when it comes to connecting dots that people have never thought of. Super creative, super innovative, and a great partner.
Awesome. And Eric, how about you introduce Alex to us?
This is Alex Kwon. He is a problem solver, like a super engineer, and just he kind of swings in like Batman when all my chaos is kind of like in its whirlwind, and just kind of figures out how to put all the pieces in place and make it happen.
Awesome. And then, you know, you're both involved in Graft Living, which is a relatively recent addition to the Detroit community of nonprofits. But you also have other professional lives as well. This is sort of a side gig for you. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what you do professionally?
I'll start. So I am trained as an engineer. So I studied mechanical engineering for my undergrad and my master's program. I'm currently working at General Motors. I've done everything under the sun there. Mechanical, electrical, software, data, and then just being the sustainability nag at GM, trying to get their plastic reduction and all their waste management down. So I am very thankful for my career there. I've learned a tremendous amount on how to be an effective change maker. And as I started to realize that my skills and my passion would be better suited in other avenues, I decided to set my sights elsewhere. So I'm still there, but really trying to nurture this project and make it more than just a project.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so my background is in organizing, activism, and so I've done a lot of work on policy outreach. I've done a lot of work just knocking on doors, community organizing, and then when I have to pay the bills, I would go get a sales job. So I kind of have these two professional careers that kind of ping pong back and forth between. And so part of this is trying to get more of this sustainability moving forward. And my degree is in green business and sustainable enterprise management. And so we found that that is not a really accessible field. So part of like what we'd like to do is change that. And that's part of where my passion on making sustainability more accessible for a much wider range of people comes.
Awesome, thank you. So let's talk about Graft. So the organization Graft Living, I know you've got a plot of land in Detroit, the Cesar Chavez Community Garden. Mm-hmm. Tell us about the organization. What is Graft Living?
Yes, that's difficult to summarize. We do so many things. Our mission statement is re-strengthening our communities by establishing connection to humanity and to nature. So as you can imagine, that covers a lot of different avenues. If we started by describing our projects, it'd sound like a chaotic, schizophrenic type of discussion. But truly what we're trying to do is get us back talking to each other, creating together, and realizing that we are a part of nature. We are not separate from. So that's what our guiding light, our guiding ethos is for everything that we do. Our garden, very humble, small community garden in Southwest Detroit, like you mentioned, Chavez Community Garden. And that is where we are, I would say, I don't want to say prototyping, that's a very, I don't know, mechanical term. We're trying to bring to light a lot of the holistic things that are missing out in the world. So circular economies, building with skilled trades, art and music, food, how do they all come together in a cohesive picture? And if we can demonstrate that, then I think a lot of people will start to realize this is possible. We can all win as a part of nature. So that's really our guiding light.
And I think the project, that we worked with you on, which is that micro greenhouse, that really does highlight a lot of different parts of what you're doing. It has, the design element, you're using reclaimed materials, you're working with community to make that happen. So let's talk a little bit about the greenhouse itself. Where did that idea stem from to create that self-sustaining greenhouse?
You want to take this?
Sure. So, gosh, maybe 20 years ago, this idea came up of doing a straw bale greenhouse that's with reclaimed materials. And so this design has kind of been and concept been locked in my head for about 20 years. And so now it's physically manifested. And part of this, what motivated that was looking at food issues, looking at green architecture, looking at a lot of the things that ultimately plugs in very nicely with the idea of graft living, of bringing people together around sustainability. And so the greenhouse was just kind of one kind of piece of hardware, so to speak, because food is an important issue, housing is an important issue, keeping the planet livable is an important issue. So, and we weave all of that into the greenhouse and how we, just kind of, hey, just try stuff. And, we have some stuff that doesn't work, but more often than not, it works. And then what doesn't work, we learn from and evolve, which kind of, and that's kind of unique with our organization, that, we're going off paper with this. And then, with my background, I'm just used to working off the map normally. So it's been, a beautiful process.
So let's talk about the structure of the greenhouse. How is it built, and why did you choose those materials and building methods?
All right, how about I take this one?
Sure.
That's a great question. I would say that the actual design of the greenhouse lay dormant for a long time. We knew we wanted to build something really cool that serves people, but what it looks like, the final form, was undetermined. And it's hard to live in that space of uncertainty of like, what's it gonna look like? When is it gonna happen? But the voice inside of me, the engineer, wanted to get it all done, but I had to check that with the actual mission of this project, which is how do we actually change the narrative and start building things in a more responsible fashion. So instead of designing something and saying, where do we procure parts to fit this design, we said, where are the sustainable materials, local materials, waste product, and use that to inform the design. So let's flip the script, and you'll hear of that a lot in what we have to share is just changing the order of things can be all the difference you make. So for example, I must have blasted 30 calls looking for anything structural wood that's waste product or structural steel, until finally there was a business that we can do a plug or not, I don't know if they would appreciate that, but they said, yes, let's do it. Let's donate this material that is taking up space in our inventory, take this off our lot, we'll donate it to you, you write us a tax deductible check, and it's a win-win. And I love a win-win. And we took that steel, I'll spare the nitty-gritty details, but that is what the first element was for us to design the space. To design is what is available. And it takes longer, it's you gotta be really patient and creative, but it is so much more rewarding. And that is something I'm learning, and something that Eric always is a great voice in my ear to be like, slow it down, let's get creative, let's actually be aligned to our mission. And I'm very thankful for that.
Yeah, and also to add to that is there's also an element of experimentation in every component and also as every system. So a really good thing that I have found to remind myself looking forward, at things is get very comfortable with the idea that this might not work. Because if it is very safe and perfect, well, that's going to keep you locked in business as usual. And that's not working for society, it's not working for the planet, and ultimately it's not working for the economy.
Right, I could go on wish.com and probably buy a greenhouse that,
right.
It may blow over in some of our spring winds and then it becomes garbage, right? So
That's right.
I know that the work you're doing with designing your greenhouse is using sustainable materials that are found on that property, but also building methods that are ancient and time tested. So talk about that kind of like learning from other cultures and learning from, history. What are the building methods you're using?
Yeah, so with earthen building methods, it doesn't matter who your ancestors are. They have used some form of earthen building. And the formula is, I wouldn't say universal, but it seems to involve the same 3 ingredients all across the world. But there's parts of the Great Wall of China that are used with earthen building. We have, in Africa, there's a lot of earthen building. In the Middle East, there's a lot of earthen building. We get into Europe. In Asia, there's earthen building. And Native Americans certainly have done a lot of earthen building. And we look at what we call modern building is not just not sustainable, but it doesn't really last. When you think of a wood 2x4, it's terrible as a building material. Bugs eat it, it molds, and it burns. And then we look at the oldest inhabited building in the United States is out in New Mexico, which is a 1,000-year-old building that's not made with traditional, what we consider traditional stick frame construction. And here's something that holds up over the centuries. And we've seen so many examples of this around the world. And when we think about, we're cutting down trees, we're putting petrochemicals into our homes, and it's not holding up. And it also, there's issues with off-gassing that with many of these chemicals. So when we get into the potential of having something that's better for the earth, that has better durability, and is healthier for us, why aren't we really looking at this in a substantive way as a society?
And Alex, if you wouldn't mind sharing a bit about that circular economy concept as well, how, the building is made with reclaimed materials, and then when it has lived its useful lifespan, what happens to it?
Well, that's a good question. I think for some of those materials, we are keeping them from landfills. So that's sort of the overarching goal. When we look at the windows that we salvaged and we took the glass out and we put that into the greenhouse, there are ways to crush that up and recycle things. We have great partnerships throughout the city who are very creative, and they recycle things that a lot of larger recyclers don't do. So that's a partnership we're going to want to leverage. And the natural materials, that's really where the cradle-to-cradle idea will really thrive, is in 1,000 years, let's say, things drastically change and this greenhouse kind of crumbles. The whole structure goes back to the earth. It goes back to where it came from. It's like taking something and borrowing it and giving it back. And that's the philosophy that we all should sort of embrace when we make decisions. And if we do something like, we're getting more plastics out of the earth, then we should do it mindfully. And that's really what we want to strengthen. That's with regards to the greenhouse. I would say at a bigger level, the philosophy of the lot, the garden, is how do we bring in the elements that help that circular economy happen a little easier. I think proximity is a huge enabler for living a more sustainable life. So we have healthy food growing all around you with a greenhouse, and it's got fish and it's got all this technology that helps you ultimately grow and live a healthier life without compromising convenience. We're building a small structure that hopefully we can cook in, and that's the goal. We get the healthy foods, cook healthy meals, consume it, And we also have a compost station. So now all of that, even human waste, but really like yard waste and any like of the materials that are grown in the garden go back into the garden. And it's like a micro ecosystem. That's what we call it. So another thing we hope to demonstrate and really change the way people think about how we interact with nature.
One thing that I took with me from our visit to the community garden and the greenhouse is how colorful it is. You've got, the flags that are in the greenhouse, you've got the fence that's painted, and you have that beautiful table that's a reclaimed wire spool. Mm-hmm. Talk about the table and the intention for the table, because I think that blends a lot of the art, the culture, and the community in one place. So,
should I take this one? You're absolutely right. You're stealing. You know us better than we do. The wire spool. Once you see these things, you'll see it everywhere. It came from a industrial rewiring job throughout the city. That's going on all the time. One of the brilliant neighbors said, "I found this. Can we go get it?" And they actually got approval from the site manager to take it off. And we were literally rolling that thing down the street for 2 blocks to get to the garden. And people were videotaping us and just having a hoot. But that sort of creative eye is very infectious. And I think doing the work we do in the community, it's sort of retraining people. It's the saying, one man's trash is another man's treasure. It takes, a sensitivity to looking at things as a resource. So that neighbor brought that to the table, no pun intended. And we said, okay, let's take this gift that this person's bringing and let's have it serve the community. It's designed to be round, like King Arthur's round table. No one is at the head of the table. There is no head. Everyone is equal. And another neighbor who's more artistically minded, she's a musician and also a visual artist. She said, I would love to celebrate my ancestors and build the Mayan calendar. So we designed together and painted the very intricate Mayan calendar on this table. It took 3 times as long as we expected, but as things do. And we learned about what is embedded in this art form. It's actually very fascinating how much space and time and mythical creatures are baked into one form of media. And I love it. It kind of dissolves our own internal boundaries of space and time in art and storytelling. We oriented it to solar north, so it's actually sitting, properly, so to speak. And it's already served as many places to feed, to cook, to feed, to play games, just to talk, to pull out our laptop and do work. It's already serving very, very well. I love that story too. Mm-hmm.
That's beautiful. So what's next for Graft? What are your big, exciting future projects?
Ooh, we got a lot of irons in the fire, a lot. How about I take a swag and then you can jump in? We got so much, and again, like I described, it can get a little overwhelming at times. The biggest project we're working on right now is called Unity House. It's kind of play on words. It's supposed to be community house, but instead of community, it's unity. Bringing things together, as our organizational name suggests. We are building it with the same ethos as we did the greenhouse. Let's use as much salvage material. We're going for the most strict green certification for this structure as possible. And it's going to be beautiful. So we want people to feel inspired to live a more connected life. And this is where we'll have some winter classes. As you know, it gets really cold out here. And really cook healthy foods, so be of service to the community we're building in. We also our nonprofit was founded on an educational basis. So we used to yell across the street to the children to say, hey, come learn about rainwater harvesting. I'll teach you how to do math and whatever. And now we've had over 200 students this year, 2021, that have come through our program where we're teaching everything we're learning and learning back from them. It's just a relationship. So we are refining that offering. We want to make it more accessible, which is where a big part of where you folks come in is how do we use different platforms and make it sexy, make it cool, and democratize it, get it to as many people as possible. So the educational outreach, Unity House, community engagement, of course, it needs to be dialed up as always. What else do we have going on?
Yeah, and to kind of add to Alex's point with the education is we're using sustainability that you can, if you're a student, you can put your hands in the dirt or work on a building or something. And we're using sustainability to teach those STEAM lessons. So one of the things that this does is it pivots how sustainability is usually taught the other way around, that it's this abstract thing that's kind of out there, which isn't all that relatable to the vast majority of population. But this, it's kind of taking that sustainability and the other way around, because we all have to live sustainably, and we all kind of are a good friend of ours has a saying, Tom over at Green Garage talks about that every company's a triple bottom line company, just most don't realize it. And it's kind of the same with us, as if you live on planet Earth, you're into sustainability, you just don't realize it yet.
One thing I want to add, maybe you can splice this however we do, we want to do more art and music as well. So we have a lot of relationships, musicians who are mind-blowingly talented, and local artists who helped us with the table, but can also make murals and graphic design. We want to make sure that that is an uplifted portion of our outreach. Beauty is going to be the deciding factor of how much people get engaged with this thing, that we really need critical mass. So, so beauty is an absolute essential. So we're going to make sure we focus on that next year.
Yeah, and the other thing is we don't want to be restricted just to one type of student or even one generation of student, because there is so much, and also with our organization being a graft of, we don't care what your ethnic background is. We don't care, I shouldn't say we don't care what your ethnic background is that we want to bring together people of different ethnic backgrounds, different social economic classes, different professional backgrounds, different whatever, and generations, because this is how we learn from each other. And if we can talk to each other just even on a small bit, maybe that can start a catalyst as a society where we become a little less distrusting of each other and can start really solving some of the wounds and problems that we have in American society. And, so, part of that is that, we're not just, one community as is geographically defined. We're one community as a human race. And part of this is that our young people have a tremendous amount to teach old people, particularly around sustainability and climate change. And it doesn't matter what the culture is I'm finding a lot of young people are very frustrated with their parents and grandparents on the lack of action around the environment and just something very basic of having a livable world.
Well, thank you. I appreciate your time today. And what I love about your work and what you're doing is you're incorporating so many different things. It is art, it is design, it is sustainability, it's horticulture, it's community building. I mean, it's really interdisciplinary in nature and is really an important part of the community where you exist. So thank you for sharing your work with us, and it was so great to come out and scan the greenhouse. We had a lovely time. It was a beautiful day.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.